Running on empty explores a quiet but powerful idea. Many people struggle not because of what happened to them, but because of what did not happen. Jonice Webb introduces emotional neglect as the experience of growing up without enough emotional attention, validation, or guidance. Unlike abuse or trauma, emotional neglect leaves no obvious memories or dramatic scenes, which makes it especially confusing. People sense that something is wrong inside them, yet they cannot point to a clear cause, so they often blame themselves. The book begins by explaining how children depend on adults not just for food and safety, but for emotional learning. When parents notice feelings, name them, and respond with care, children learn that emotions matter and are manageable. When parents are distracted, dismissive, overwhelmed, or emotionally absent, children learn the opposite lesson without anyone ever saying it out loud. Feelings become invisible, inconvenient, or unsafe, and the child adapts by pushing them away. Webb emphasizes that emotional neglect is usually unintentional. Many parents who emotionally neglect their children love them deeply and provide materially. Some were raised the same way and simply do not know how to respond emotionally. Others believe toughness, independence, or silence builds strength. This framing is important because it shifts the story away from blame and toward understanding how patterns quietly repeat across generations. As the book moves forward, it describes the common adult signs of emotional neglect. People may feel empty, disconnected, or numb without knowing why. They often struggle to identify what they feel or what they need, and they may rely heavily on achievement or approval to feel okay. Relationships can feel confusing, either distant or overwhelming, because emotions were never practiced in a safe way. One of the most painful effects discussed is a deep sense of being flawed or different. Because nothing obvious went wrong in childhood, adults assume the problem must be them. Webb explains how this internal narrative forms early, when a child interprets emotional absence as personal failure. This belief can quietly shape choices, confidence, and self-worth for years. The book also explores how emotional neglect affects boundaries. Without emotional guidance, people may struggle to say no, recognize their limits, or trust their instincts. They may ignore discomfort until it becomes burnout or resentment. Webb connects this to the childhood lesson that one's internal signals were not important enough to be noticed. A major strength of the book is how it explains emotions as skills rather than weaknesses. Webb reframes feelings as useful data that guide decisions, relationships, and self-protection. When emotions are ignored, people lose access to an internal navigation system. Much of adult distress, she argues, comes from living without this guidance and trying to compensate through logic alone. As the tone shifts toward healing, Webb introduces the idea that recovery starts with awareness. Simply naming emotional neglect can be life-changing because it gives language to something previously invisible. Understanding that emptiness or confusion has a source reduces shame and opens the door to change. The reader is encouraged to observe patterns gently rather than judge them. The book then focuses on reconnecting with emotions in practical ways. Webb encourages slowing down and noticing bodily signals, moods, and reactions. Feelings are treated as visitors that can be listened to instead of avoided. This process can feel unfamiliar or uncomfortable at first, especially for people who learned early on to tune emotions out. Another key theme is learning self-compassion. Because emotionally neglected children often become self-critical adults, Webb stresses replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, the reader learns to ask what am I feeling and why might that make sense. This shift helps rebuild an internal sense of support that was missing earlier in life. Webb also addresses relationships and how emotional neglect shapes them. She explains how people may choose partners who repeat emotional distance or feel uneasy with closeness. Healing involves learning to express needs, tolerate vulnerability, and accept emotional responses from others. This can change not only romantic relationships but friendships and family dynamics as well. Parenting is discussed not as a demand for perfection, but as an opportunity for awareness. Webb reassures readers that emotional connection is built through noticing, responding, and repairing, not through never making mistakes. This perspective helps break cycles of neglect by focusing on presence rather than guilt. Throughout the book, storytelling is used quietly rather than dramatically. Short examples illustrate how ordinary families, classrooms, and homes can unintentionally teach emotional silence. These stories feel familiar, which helps readers see themselves without feeling exposed or judged. The tone remains steady, respectful, and grounded. By the later chapters, the message becomes hopeful but realistic. Healing emotional neglect is not about uncovering hidden memories or reliving the past. It is about building skills that were never taught and allowing emotions to take their rightful place in daily life. Progress is described as gradual and uneven, which helps manage expectations.